I've avoided telling this story for most of my life, partly because it sounds insane and partly because a small part of me still believes that talking about it might bring it back. Childhood memories blur, fade, rearrange themselves, but this one hasn't. It sits in my mind like a lodged bone, sharp, unmoving, waiting to cut whenever I get too close. I was 11 when it started, old enough to understand fear, too young to understand that sometimes it doesn't go away. Back then, we had just moved into a dull, two-story rental house outside the city. My parents were excited about it. Bigger rooms, a real backyard, quiet neighborhood. I didn't care. I didn't have friends there, and the place smelled like old carpet and something damp hidden under the floorboards. Everything seemed normal for the first week. A little boring, maybe. But then I started hearing the noises inside my bedroom wall. It began one night with a soft, rhythmic tapping. I thought it was a branch hitting the siding or maybe pipes shifting. But the tapping wasn't random. It had a pattern. 3 taps. Pause. 3 taps. Pause. Like it was waiting. I remember lying in my bed, staring at that pale yellow wall beside me. It was so close to my head that if something were inside it, I imagined I could feel its breath. Tap, tap, tap. Pause. Tap, tap, tap. I tried banging back with my fist the first night. The tapping stopped instantly, and for a few seconds the silence was so heavy that I felt sure the thing, whatever it was listening. Then, slowly, deliberately, it tapped again. Once. My whole body froze. I didn't sleep at all that night. The next morning, at breakfast, I told my mom there was an animal in the wall. A mouse, maybe. Or a raccoon. Something. She brushed it off immediately. It's just the house settling, she said. Old houses make weird noises. Dad agreed, not even looking up from his newspaper. But that night the tapping came back. Faster. Closer. And now there was a new sound. A long, dragging scrape, like fingernails sliding along wood. I didn't bang back this time. I just lay as still as I could, even holding my breath to listen better. And that's when I heard it. My name. Not loud, not clear, but whispered, breathy, from inside the wall near my pillow. Aiden. I sat up so fast the covers tangled around my legs. My heart hammered in my chest. I told myself I was imagining things. Maybe I was half asleep. Maybe it was the wind. But the voice came again. Soft. Closer. Aiden, come here. That was the first night I ran screaming to my parents' room. Dad stormed back to my room, annoyed, flicking on the lights and banging on the wall himself to prove a point. He kept telling me there was nothing there, even though he didn't bother to check inside the wall at all. They let me sleep on the floor in their room that night. Only that night. The next evening, they sent me back to my room with a nightlight plugged in. You need to get used to sleeping alone again, Mom said, tucking me in. The tapping started minutes after the lights went out. But the voice didn't call my name this time. Instead, it tried something new. Whispering. Fast. Non-stop. Like someone muttering through clenched teeth, pacing back and forth in a dark room. I pressed my ear to the wall because I don't know, I was a dumb kid hoping to finally understand what lived in there, and I swear to God, the whispers got louder when I moved closer. I pulled away immediately. I wanted to scream, but the fear stuck to my throat like cement. Then came something even worse. The breathing. Slow. Wet. Heavy. Inches from where my head had just been. That night, I didn't run to my parents. I felt too terrified to move. I just curled under my blanket and waited for morning. By then, the fear wasn't just fear anymore. It was knowledge. Something was inside that wall with intention. The next day, I asked Dad again to check inside the wall. This time, he got angry. Said I was being dramatic, that I needed to stop feeding the monster, and it'll go away. It didn't. That night, I woke up to the sound of scratching, violent, desperate scratching, right behind my head. Then the wall pushed inward, like something was pushing from the other side. A tiny bulge, maybe only an inch, but real enough that my breath hitched. I jumped out of bed, so fast I tripped over my own feet. The bulge didn't come back, but the scratching continued, harsher, more frantic, like claws digging. I ran to my parents' room again. Dad got up yelling, stomping down the hall, opening my door with so much force it slammed into the wall. He was about to shout again when he froze. I'll never forget his face. His anger just drained out. He looked pale, confused, because even he heard it now. The scratching. Loud. Aggressive. But he still refused to admit anything was wrong. We'll deal with it in the morning, he muttered, pulling me back to his room with a firm grip. The next day, he patched the drywall. Not opened, patched. He covered the bulge and painted over it, sealing whatever was inside even tighter. And that night, something new happened. The thing in the wall didn't whisper. It didn't scratch. It knocked. But not randomly. Not the tapping pattern from before. This time it was rhythmic, fast, like someone beating on the inside of a coffin. And in between the bangs, a voice hissed. Let me out. I remember sliding off my bed and crawling across the room on my elbows like a soldier, trying not to be seen. I left the room and slept in the hallway, balled up against the wall opposite my door. I didn't go back in that room for days. My parents started arguing a lot around this time. Mostly about me. My mom thought I needed therapy. My dad insisted I needed discipline and to stop making shit up. But even they couldn't deny things were happening. Objects in my room moved on their own. Books fell off shelves. Lights flickered whenever I stepped in. Sometimes the closet door swung open by itself, just a crack, just enough for me to see the dark inside. The whole house felt wrong. Walking from one room to another felt like someone was following me, matching my steps exactly. The air always seemed cold on the back of my neck. I started sleeping on the couch with the TV on. One night, maybe a week later, I woke up to the static of the TV screen. Not the channel changing. Not the volume turning up. Actual static. White noise. Even though we had cable. I blinked groggily, sat up, and then froze. There were wet footprints on the carpet. Small. Child-sized. Leading from the hallway directly toward the couch I was sleeping on. My heart nearly stopped when I followed the footprints with my eyes. They ended right beside the couch. Right next to me. Like something had walked up and stood over me while I slept. I didn't scream. I couldn't. I just leaned back as slowly as possible, praying that whatever made those prints was gone. When Dad came down later that morning, he blamed me for spilling something. I stopped trying to convince them after that. The worst night happened during a thunderstorm. I was forced to sleep in my room again because my dad decided I needed to face my fears. I begged him, actually begged, but he didn't care. I grew up in a duplex that my mother rented after she and my dad split up. It wasn't a nice place, but it wasn't awful either. Just old, creaky, and damp in that way houses get when they're too close to the woods and too far from the city. The kind of place where every room feels a little too cold, even in the summer. The house had one rule. A rule my mother made very clear the day we moved in. Don't go into the basement. Ever. She didn't say it with anger. She said it with fear. That's what made it stick in my mind. Mom feared a lot of things, being alone, being broke, being late for work, but this fear was different. Sharper. Like even saying the word basement made her uneasy. I asked her what was down there. She said storage. I asked why I couldn't go down if it was just storage. She said it was dangerous. I asked what was dangerous. She changed the subject and opened the windows even though it was freezing outside, saying she needed fresh air. I dropped it. I was 8. And 8-year-olds drop things when adults get weird. But I never forgot her face. The basement door was in the kitchen. A narrow wooden door painted the same color as the walls, like the previous tenants tried to hide it. There were 3 locks on it. Not just 1. 3. Pretty strange for a storage room. At night, when the house settled and groaned, I always swore I heard something else coming from that door. Not noises exactly. More like movement. A shift in the air. The softest thump, like someone taking a step on the other side. I started avoiding the kitchen after dark. But eventually, curiosity and boredom got the better of me. Mom worked late shifts, and I usually sat alone doing homework or drawing at the table. One night, while eating cereal, I heard something from the basement door. A soft knock. Just one. Not loud. Not impatient. But intentional. I froze. Waited. Listened. Nothing. I told myself it was the house. Or the wind. Or 1,000 other things kids tell themselves so they don't freak out. But then it happened again. Knock. This time, it was quieter. Like whoever or whatever was knocking realized I heard it and didn't want to scare me. That was somehow worse. I didn't go near the door. Didn't even look at it. I just dumped my cereal in the sink and ran to my room. That night, I barely slept. The knocking didn't continue every night. Only sometimes. Once or twice a week. Always one knock. Always soft. Like it was reminding me it was there. I never opened the door. I wasn't that stupid. Even at 8, I understood one thing. When adults lock something up, it's for a reason. But there was a vent in my room that connected to the basement. I didn't know this at first. I found out the way most terrible discoveries are made. By accident. It was a Sunday afternoon. Mom was doing laundry. I was sprawled on my bed drawing some crappy comic book characters. I heard a sound from the vent. A tapping sound, but not metallic, more like fingernails tapping lightly against the inside of the duct. At first, I assumed it was just the heater kicking on. But then the tapping changed. It became rhythmic. Tap. Tap tap. Tap tap tap. Like a pattern. I leaned closer to the vent, bringing my ear right up to the slats. And that's when I heard it. A voice. A child's voice. A boy. Whispering. Is someone there? I jumped back, so hard I fell off the bed. My heart was hammering, my legs shaking. I stared at the vent like it might open and something might crawl out. A few seconds passed. Silence. I told myself it was my imagination, that I was tired, that I was hearing things. Then the boy whispered again. Please answer me. The voice wasn't scary the way horror movie voices are scary. There was no hiss, no growl, no demonic distortion. It sounded sad, lonely, desperate. That made it so much worse. I crawled backward until my back hit the wall. I didn't make a sound. A few moments later, the voice whispered a third time. Weak. Tired. I'm still here. I screamed for my mom. She rushed into the room, startled, her face full of panic. I pointed at the vent, sobbing hysterically. She didn't ask questions. She didn't lecture me. She didn't check the vent. She grabbed me, pulled me out of the room, slammed the door, and locked her bedroom door behind us. She held me so tightly I could barely breathe. She whispered over and over, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I should have moved us sooner. I'm sorry. I had no idea what she meant. All I knew was that she was terrified, and that terrified me more than any whisper from the vent. That night, she dragged my mattress into her room, and we slept with the TV on. The next day, she called the landlord. I heard only her side of the conversation, but the phrases burned into my memory. No, he's not making it up. No, I don't care what you think. You said it was sealed. No, I'm not going down there. Then you fix it. When she hung up, she told me not to go into my room anymore until things were checked. She never explained what things, but the boy kept coming back. For the next few nights, nothing happened. The house was quiet. Too quiet. My mom barely slept, and I noticed she kept glancing at the basement door whenever she passed the kitchen. On the fourth night, around 2 a.m., I woke up on the mattress in her room to a strange sound. Breathing. Not my mom's breathing. Not mine. This breathing was coming from the hallway. Slow. Wet. Shaky. Like someone who'd been crying or running or choking. I nudged my mom awake. She opened her eyes, listened, then sat straight up with a look of pure dread. She grabbed my arm and whispered, Don't move. The breathing got louder, dragging itself closer to the bedroom door. Something brushed against the wood. Lightly. Like fingers. My mom clamped her hand over my mouth, so I wouldn't make a sound. Then a voice whispered outside the door. A boy's voice. The same voice from the vent. But this time, it sounded closer. Too close. Why did you stop talking to me? I felt my mom shake. The boy spoke again. I'm lonely down here. Something scratched lightly against the door. My mom whispered into my ear, barely audible. Don't open your eyes. Don't look. Don't make a sound. I kept my eyes squeezed shut. Another whisper drifted through the crack under the door. Please play with me. The doorknob jiggled. Slowly. Then violently. Then it stopped. The breathing faded. The footsteps retreated. My mom didn't move until sunrise. She called the landlord again at dawn, screaming this time, threatening lawsuits, demanding he fix the basement immediately, today, now. He arrived 3 hours later. I wasn't supposed to listen to their conversation, but I hid behind the staircase and heard every word. He wasn't surprised. That's the part that stuck with me. He didn't act confused or skeptical or annoyed. He acted resigned. I told you not to rent this side, he muttered. My mom shot back. You told me the basement was sealed. It was sealed, he insisted. But the boy, he always finds a way. He always comes back. I felt ice crawl through my veins. What boy? My mom demanded. What is in my house? The landlord rubbed his eyes, looking exhausted, defeated. He wasn't supposed to be there, he whispered. He wasn't supposed to die down there. My mom covered her mouth. I felt the entire world tilt. The landlord continued. His father locked him in the basement in the 80s. Said he was misbehaving. That's the story he gave police. The kid was down there for days. They didn't find him until... He stopped, looked at the floor. People always say childhood memories are supposed to be the safest ones, the golden ones. The ones your brain protects by softening the edges. But not all childhood memories fade. Some sharpen with time. Some grow teeth. I've spent most of my life trying to convince myself this memory isn't real. But every time I close my eyes, I can still smell the wet metal of that rotten merry-go-round, still hear the hollow clang of the swings creaking in wind that wasn't there. And I still see her. The girl at the edge of the playground. The one who shouldn't have been alive. I grew up in a nothing little town, 1 grocery store, 2 gas stations, and a school playground that everyone avoided except during the day. It wasn't haunted or creepy or dangerous. It was just old. And lonely. The kind of place where the paint is sun-bleached, the metal rusts without rain, and the slides creak even when no one is on them. But the playground I'm talking about wasn't that one. The playground I found wasn't on any map, wasn't behind any school, wasn't real, or shouldn't have been. I was 9 years old when I first stumbled onto it. That summer, I started exploring the woods behind our neighborhood. The trees weren't dense, and most of the paths were worn by kids who liked to build forts or pretend to hunt monsters. It was one of the only places I felt free, because at home, things were tense. My dad had started drinking more. My mom had started crying more. I learned quickly that both of them shouted at me less if I just stayed out of the house. So I did. Every day. Until the sun set. On the day everything happened, I remember it was unbearably hot. The kind of heat that presses against your skin like heavy hands. The air was thick. The cicadas screamed loud enough to drown out my own thoughts. I wandered deeper into the woods than usual, following a trail I'd never noticed before. It was narrow, winding between tall pine trees and disappearing into a patch of darker, older forest. I don't know why I went in. Curiosity, maybe. Or stupidity. Or something else. Something pulling. The deeper I went, the quieter it got. The cicadas stopped. The birds stopped. Even the wind stopped. The silence felt unnatural, like something was holding its breath. Then I saw it. A clearing. And in the center of the clearing stood a playground. Not a modern one. Not a colorful, plastic kids slide like normal schools have. This one was old. Rusted. Crooked. Like something from the 1950s that had been left to rot for decades. A metal slide, streaked with brown rust. A merry-go-round missing 2 panels. 3 swings hanging by chains that looked ready to snap. A seesaw that sagged to one side. And a sandbox with dark, soggy sand, even though it hadn't rained in weeks. I froze at the edge of the clearing. I had never seen this playground before. No one had mentioned it. No kid had ever talked about it. But I felt like I'd been there before. Like it was waiting for me. The air was colder in the clearing. A full 10 degrees cooler. I could see my breath when I exhaled. That was the first sign something was wrong. I should have run home right then. But I didn't. Kids don't recognize danger until it's already too late. I stepped closer to the merry-go-round, drawn by a soft, rhythmic sound. It was spinning. Not fast. Just a slow, creaking rotation. But spinning. There was no wind. No animals. No one pushing it. I stared at it for a long time. I don't know how long. Something about watching it felt hypnotic. Then a voice spoke behind me. Are you here to play? I spun around so fast I nearly fell. A girl stood on the edge of the clearing, half hidden behind a tree. At first, I thought she was just another kid from town, but the longer I looked, the more wrong she seemed. Her dress was white, old-fashioned, almost colorless. Her hair was tangled and too long, hanging in uneven strands like it hadn't been brushed in years. Her skin was pale, not sickly pale, but colorless pale, like she wasn't entirely solid. But her eyes were the worst part. They were huge, dark, and absolutely empty. She stared at me without blinking. Do you want to play? She asked again, tilting her head slightly. Every instinct I had screamed at me to run, but I nodded. I don't know why. Maybe because her voice wasn't threatening. It wasn't cheerful either. It was flat. Like she didn't understand emotion. Like she'd heard the words from someone else and was repeating them without knowing what they meant. She stepped into the clearing, and the air dropped another 10 degrees. I swallowed hard. What's your name? She stared at me for a long time. Then she said, I don't remember. I shivered. Kids remember their names. Even toddlers remember their names. What do you want to play? I asked, not sure what else to say. She pointed to the merry-go-round. I stepped onto it reluctantly. It was ice cold, almost burning against my palms. The girl grabbed the handle and began to push. I expected her to struggle. She looked thin, fragile, unhealthy. But she pushed that heavy metal wheel with frightening ease. It spun faster, and faster, and faster. The rusted metal shrieked, vibrating beneath my feet. Stop, I yelled. I'll fall. She didn't stop. Please, I shouted. Then she whispered something so quietly, I almost didn't hear it. Don't leave me. She grabbed the metal bar and climbed on beside me, her empty eyes inches from mine. The merry-go-round spun so fast the trees blurred. I closed my eyes, gripping the handle until my knuckles turned white. When it finally slowed, I stumbled off, dizzy and nauseous. The girl stood perfectly still, staring at me. Her head tilted again. You came back, she whispered. Back. I echoed, confused. You came back this time. I felt a chill crawl down my spine. I've never been here before. She stepped closer. Yes, you have. I backed up instinctively. My heel hit the sandbox. No, I haven't. I don't even know what this place is. She stared at me with something like confusion, or sadness, or anger. You always forget. My breath caught. What do you mean? She stared at me for a long time without answering. Then her expression changed. Her mouth widened slightly in what should have been a smile. But it looked wrong. Forced. Like something pretending to smile. Do you want to see something? She asked. Before I could respond, she walked toward the sandbox. I didn't follow at first. Something about her voice made my stomach twist. But curiosity finally dragged me closer. She knelt in the sand, her pale fingers digging slowly. I watched, silent, uneasy. She dug deeper and deeper, her hands disappearing into the dark muck. Then she pulled something out. Something small, something white. She held it up to me with both hands. A tooth. A human tooth. I recoiled instantly. What is that? She didn't answer. She dug again. Another shape emerged.